Brilliant, how amazing. How amazing to have you all here. Actually, it makes me feel quite emotional. I've got all my feet.
Don't you start.
I've got everyone here. It's amazing to have you all in one room. Because all of you, of course, have been in one room with me at some time or another, or virtually all of you. And it is incredible to have gathered you, and thank you for coming. And obviously tonight, the title, I have that bag here because I've got a thing that's attached to here, and the man said to me I had to put it somewhere on my being, and there wasn't really anywhere to put it. I was like, is it my pants? Is it my bra? Where do I put the thing? So luckily I had a little bag. So we have a thing in my bag, that's why I'm clutching a bag. But so, tonight we're talking, or we're experiencing the truth of who you are, because the truth of who we are is our own experience. It can't be thought, because we are the source of all thought. So it isn't actually an individual thing, it has to be felt, experienced by us all. And I thought that, as I say, we're all gathered, and to start the experience so that we have the essence, the energy of that essence of it, because really we are in form, we have a body, we have a mind, we have this experience of being human, but at the core of us all is this essence of us all. We're all one, we're all connected, and that's why I thought it would be lovely to start with a meditation, with a chanting, because in that space and in that energy we can experience dropping into our essence, dropping into that silence, dropping into presence, so that we know who we are in an experiential way before I even say anything. So what we're going to do, first of all, start with 3 conscious breaths, because I'm just going to thinking, any of you who have encouraged to breathe, I'm not going to look at anyone who may not have found it very easy, is now tonight going to be made to do it with me. And
but the fact you're not looking at me, you know it's me.
I'm not looking at anyone, but I thought that it would be good because the breath anchors the mind, and when we breathe in deeply into the centre of our being, we can anchor the mind, we can come into the body. The body can't be anywhere but presence, in our present moment. So we're going to take 3 conscious breaths to begin with. Excuse me. 3 conscious breaths. I don't want to be clearing my throat into a microphone, do I? Where we breathe deep into our tummy, and then there's a pause before we breathe out, and in that space we can experience the essence of us, the truth of who we are. We're going to breathe out all the tension. We'll do 3 of those breaths, then we're going to do 10 minutes of Om. I have no watch, so luckily I have a time person here. We do 10 minutes, we do it all at our own time. Now Om is the sound of the universe, and the Om sound encompasses all sounds that are, every sound that is, everything that is. It is the sound of the universe. So it's the sound of us, it's us, our wholeness, our oneness, and all that is. So in that space of the sound of Om, we can just start to become more and more at ease, more and more at peace. Any of you who don't want to Om, don't worry, just enjoy the sound, because it is an incredible sound. It's really coming through our being, so if it can be kind of more an internal thing rather than sung, but again, just follow whatever feels right for you. And we'll do 10 minutes of that, all at your own pace. And then when I stop, we'll just sit and have a couple of minutes of watching your breath. So what we'll do in that, I'll direct you again or guide you again. You'll just breathe in and breathe out and just watch your own breath. But notice particularly the space from when we breathe in and then we breathe out. Sorry. And then there's a space at the bottom of the breath, and that's the space where the truth of who you are, your essence. So it's more of the experiential feeling, and that's more important than anything. If you from tonight can feel more in your centre, more at ease, more peace, that's all that matters. So and then I'll chat, and I'll chat on for a bit, and then we'll have some supper. And then afterwards, if you want to ask questions and we want to explore more, then we'll continue. So, okay. So if you just get comfortable, and then if you want to close your eyes, it's up to you. But we're going to do 3 conscious breaths. So we breathe in deeply into your tummy. And then breathe out. Let go of all the tension. Then breathing in. Breathe out. Breathing in. Breathing out. And then on the next in-breath, we'll breathe in, and then on the out breath, I'll start to on. You just do as you feel. So breathing in. Then just stay in your essence, your energy, feel the whatever vibration you're feeling. And just watch your breath. Just watch the in-breath and the out-breath. And then if you can, just focus on the gap when you breathe out before you breathe in again. That space at the bottom of the breath, the space that's within you, the place that's always still, always calm, the witnesser, the watcher, the essence of who you are. So if you can just notice that space and that stillness, and we'll just stay here for just another couple of minutes before I start to speak. So now just take in one again, deep breath, big conscious breath into your tummy. And then breathe out. And then when you're ready, just open your eyes. Just let a little bit of water. Lovely to have that sound, all of us as one, just that oneness, that wholeness, to experience it. And as I said, who we are, the truth of who we are, cannot be thought. It can only be experienced, because we are the source of all thought. We are all that is. And really the question, who am I, is something that really and truly a lot of people don't really ask. They believe themselves to be all of the things that they've been told, all of the conditioning, all of the the societal things, the parental things, the cultural things. But who am I? It's a very, very important question. And really and truly, it's one that if we ask that, we ask it frequently, and we ask it daily, and we ask it hourly, and we use the breath, and we bring ourselves back into the center. So the breath, we can always come back with the breath into the present moment. So who am I? And of course, what can come up is, well, I'm Julia, or whatever name we might be, and I'm a woman, or I'm a man, or I'm the profession we might have, or the sport we do, or the hobby, or many different things. But actually everything, if we breathe in and go, who am I? And then whatever arises, we just let it go. Then gradually, we can experience the I below the I that is Julia, or any of us here. And we can start to have that experience. And I don't know, we can chat when we're afterwards or having our food, whether when you were oming, whether there is an ability, or not an ability, but more an experience of that essence, where there isn't an attachment to our name, or our gender, or our profession, or our anything that we might identify with out in the world. So really and truly, it was Ramana Maharshi who he said the only meditation that's necessary is to ask, who am I? And who am I? But when anything arises of, well, I'm a runner, or I'm a therapist, or any of those things, but I'm none of those things, and I'm not Julia, I am. The I below the I is the essence of this being who is now being Julia. But that's why the on, being able to come back to the on, maybe even in your daily life, just to be able to come back to the breath, and come back to even chanting an Om occasionally, can bring you back into that experience. Because really and truly, the Chinese spiritual teacher Lao Tzu, he says, the center of your being, you all know who you are. And actually that is the truth. All of us know who we are. At the center of our being, I can't tell you who you are, no one else can tell you who you are. It's an experience that only you can have. And many people will go through their whole lives living it by default, living it through the person someone else wants them to be, the person they think they are, the person they think the person wants them to be, the person they think their parents want them to be, the person their parents do want them to be, many things. And they'll live their whole life trying to be this person. Whereas ultimately, the center of our being, we all know who we are. We're not our profession, or our name, or our gender, or any of those things. We are, that we know ourselves when we stay in our center. So how do we stay in our center is one thing I'm going to kind of explore. But also what happens. So why aren't we in our center? Because ultimately, if we're absolutely in our center, and I don't know, just doing a small on, we only did 10 minutes. I know during all the lockdown, when we were allowed out, some of us would meet. I used to do it online. We do omming and chanting every week online. But then we also, I think on Christmas Day and New Year's Day, Nadia and I did an hour online of omming. But also we met in St James's Park and we did an hour. And the more we're in that space, the more it becomes evident that the only thing that's really important is this work, is this inner work. Because if we know who we are, and we're at our center, and we're absolutely experiencing the present moment, every moment, then we can fully live, and then we can be who we truly are. Because it's, welcome. No, it's lovely for you. It's lovely to see you. It's lovely. No, it's really lovely to see you. So here you are. You missed the omming. Never mind, it's another time. But yes. So at the center of our being, we know who we are, and we're always present, and we're always in our center. Then there wouldn't be any of the strife and the upset and the stress and the anxiety and all of the things that can go on in life. So what happens? Why aren't we in our center? Why is it that we have today gathered a few people who are committed to being in their center, who are committed to being who they are, who are committed to doing this inner work? And actually I believe, or I believe it's the wrong word actually, but I can see that every single person on the planet was committed to being in their present moment and being in the centre, the entire everything would change. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't do it just because we look out into the world and go, well, no one else is doing it, and it's all of, you know, a lot of stress and conflict and war. Because ultimately, the only reason there's war and conflict and stress and strife is the conflict and stress and strife within each individual. And actually, the thing that would absolutely change everything is everybody healing and clearing the conflict within themselves. So how does it begin? Well, we have to all really explore our paradigm, and by that I mean our map of who we think we are and who we believe ourselves to be. Because what happens is we got born, and we came into this world, and we were immediately, I think as a little baby we didn't know there was separation, but we're immediately given a name, and then we're immediately given a kind of identification which unconsciously and not with any ill intent, our parents start to do. Because of course most parents have lost the connection to who they truly are. And so it's very important for all of us to explore our paradigm, and by that I mean every single belief that we have. Where did we get that belief? Does it really hold true? And do we need it? And actually, is that who we truly are? And that is absolutely, people will hold true to, hold on to their beliefs. They'll hold on to values. And of course, we're often given that as a blueprint to kind of build up who we are, is, well, you have to have your belief system, you have to have values. Well, actually, they can be part of a journey as being a human, but ultimately, to know who we are, we need to be able to recognize that these things have been given to us by society, by our parents, by our culture, by any of the things that become being human. Now, of course, actually, we come into this world in a body. Very soon, we start to have this illusion of separation, because we start to believe that, especially that parents and schooling and society starts to tell us how we should be and who we are and what we should do. And I think that really and truly it's the questioning and the challenging. To know who we truly are is we really need to be free of our ego. Now, our ego is our adaptations, our wounding, which we'll come on to, all of the things that we believe are us, who we are. We need to be free of that. We need to be free of all our beliefs. And we essentially, at the deepest level, we need to be free of fear. And I think ultimately, most humans are living in fear because they believe themselves to be separate. They believe themselves to be in this little body that is vulnerable, that can get hurt, that is going to die. And therefore, there's a fear and a grasping and a clinging to a need to be something, to be a somebody. And then of course it can work in reverse. So, okay, what happens? We get born and we start to be given a set of family beliefs. We get given a set of cultural beliefs or societal beliefs. We get given global beliefs. And these are things that we are told we need to be in touch with. And of course they can be different in different cultures, different societies, different villages, different families. But that starts to be imprinted. And then we're in a family where the value system is that working hard is the most important thing, or being artistic is important, or being sporty is important, and therefore not sitting about and not being lazy. And there will be things where you're not allowed to show emotion, you're not allowed to cry, you aren't allowed to talk about certain things, you're not allowed to giggle, you're not allowed to dance about. There's lots of things that mean that what happens is children inevitably start to feel they've got to survive in this family group, they've got to then survive at school. And so what can happen, of course, is they start to adapt, and they'll start to hide parts of themselves away, they'll start to actually lose parts that they're deemed not acceptable by the family, by the school, by the culture. They will hide bits. They'll know really and truly that they're somebody who's artistic, for instance, but their family doesn't rate art. It has to be academia, they have to make money, so they'll hide that bit away, and it may get lost. for the whole of their life, or it may pop up in the form of meeting, loving people who are artistic. So really, this is conditioning, has started from when we're tiny. I also think we bring it in. So these conditionings are very, very karmic. We've got a whole lot of energetic patterning that's been going on for lifetimes and lifetimes. But at the center of it all, at the core of it all, we have that essence that is the truth of who we are. And that can get so lost, that will be calling out, it will be coming up, the rising up of our intuition or whatever. But if it keeps getting crushed, or it keeps getting not recognized or not heard, then what happens is, of course, we start to get what in therapeutic terms is called hurt, wounded, traumatized, but we'll go forward. Now, of course, we're all incredible and we all survived and we all went forward in our lives, but we're kind of walking wounded. So we're trying to fit a suit that doesn't really fit, and we'll go into life, and that's probably absolutely everybody will be carrying some sort of hurt that they don't even know they're carrying. And they'll go into school, and then of course, when we're little and we're in a family where if we jumped around and were lively and we were told shush, be quiet, what happens is the adaptation can happen that either we'll go into school and we'll be too quiet, and then we'll be, lose ourselves at the back of the class, or we'll go to school and we'll be very, very naughty and very lively, because of course the adaptation could be going the other way. So all of these things are going on through life, and nobody's necessarily ever asking, who are you? So the question of who am I is not asked, or who are you, isn't asked in school. We're not asked it necessarily in our family. We're told who we are meant to be. So therefore, that conditioning and that adaptations will mean that we're going forward with somebody who we think may be acceptable in the world, or somebody who we're pushing against. So we may be going into the world being the opposite to the person who people want us to be, but it's still the opposite of who we truly are. And of course, everybody wants to be whole. At the core of our being, as Lao Tzu said, at the center of our being, we all know who we are. And all of us want to be whole. All of us want to express our true essence, our true nature, our true energy, our being. We actually want to be loved for who we truly are. And we absolutely, what can happen, of course, is we'll end up going into an adaptation and trying to get people to love our adaptation. So the very thing that we've adapted to is then the thing that doesn't necessarily work. And of course, we'll get ourselves into all sorts of spirals of confusion. And the thing is that it will keep going until we stop and say, who am I? And start to unravel it and start to peel back the layers. And of course, everybody here has started to peel back the layers. Everybody has gone, something has happened. Generally, the reason people start to look and ask, who am I, is because something has happened that isn't good, isn't happy. And it would be lovely, of course, if we started to know who we are without having to have difficulty. But usually life becomes untenable in some way. Either there's a really difficult thing, and it's usually all the things are to do with relationship with ourselves, but they'll show up in the relationship with other people, in our work, something isn't working, in our relationships, and we'll go and seek help to say something's not working. And ultimately that's often the way that people will start to then investigate, who am I? Because of course ultimately it's us who has to know who we are. And I think that it can be that I think it's up to 95%. I know in the, when we pick our partners, I know the Imago model of relationship therapy that I work with. People can pick their partners 90 to 95% unconsciously. But of course, it's not just picking our partners. We can be 95%, get to, I think it's Joe Dispenza said, by the age of 35, but I don't know it's necessarily an age, that we are living unconsciously. So what's happening is we're thinking, this is who I am, but ultimately there's 95% of you that's in unconscious. There's 5% which is living with that ability to change, but we're going out, and actually what we're doing, and you can watch it, once you start to investigate your own patterns, you can see it in other people's patterns, but what's happening is you're repeating the same script over and over and over again. So you might, go to school and there was difficulty at school where people were unkind to you, and you internalised that, you weren't okay in some way, or that you were always going to be left out, or different people internalise things in different ways. Then what can happen is you go out into life and you will unwittingly and unconsciously and unknowingly have this veil of projection where you will be seeing the world through your pain. And so then, of course, it repeats. So then you go into a situation where it's a place of work, or it's a hobby where you've gone to what's supposed to be a lovely skiing holiday or something, and you then go, oh, I've been left out, or people are horrid to me. Now, of course, it can look, until people start to look at themselves, it can look that that's the truth, that what's going on outside is absolutely what's happening. But ultimately, everything that's going on the outer realm is something to do with us. And as I said, if we're 90% unconscious, then it's so important that we start to investigate. That if we can start to go from the perspective that the truth of who we are is beyond any of our identification. The truth of who we are is beyond any idea we might have about ourselves. Whether that's a great idea that we're an amazing person, or it's an idea that I'm not a good person, that I'm, anything of whether I'm a good person and that I'm doing the right thing and I'm being kind, or I'm always failing, or I don't get it right, or no one likes me. All those ideas of who we are not the truth of who you are. The truth of who you are is beyond anything. The truth of who you are is joyous, blissful, fun, presence, abundance, all of the things that aren't seeming very prevalent out in the world. We don't see it very much, unfortunately, but it is the truth of who we are. The truth of who we are is in a state of ease, joy, relaxation, and that's why the investigation is so important, or even gathering together a group of people who are investigating themselves, knowing that everything that's going on in the outer realms is something to do with them. When we start to recognise that we are one, we are part of the divine spark, we're all part of the stream of consciousness, with a focal point, this stream of consciousness that's creating all that is, the universe is, the incredible experience we have, that we are all part of that, we're all one. And absolutely it is true that, I think it's Rumi's quote is, we're not a drop in the ocean, we're the whole ocean in one drop. We are one, we are whole. What we do unto another, we do to ourselves. What another does to us, they do to themselves. There is no separation. The separation is an aberration. The feeling we're separate beings, that we are somehow apart, that we're somehow people aren't going to include us, aren't going to be kind to us. I know that experience happens. But the truth is that we are all connected, we are all one. And the way we will change ourselves, change the world, experience ourselves, more important than anything, all that matters is we do our own inner work. So if we do want to make a difference in the world, and I know a lot of people do, it is that be the change you want to see in the world. And that change isn't out there, it's in here. When we have the inner shift, then what happens is things start to change on the outside. And I think all of you we've worked together, all of you, when that's been able to happen, and I do understand it's a difficult thing often, when you've been able to do that, you've seen the shifts happen on the outside, that when we really, really recognise that everything is to do with us, absolutely everything is to do with us, and if we really and truly do investigate all of the things that are holding us back, so that is going in and investigating everything. If something's going on the outer realms, whether that's good, whether it's not good, whether it's a repeated pattern, and we go, what's it to do with me? And lots of you know my one finger points forward. There are three pointing back at you. So if we're going, you've done that, then the three, I'm pointing at Nadia now, no one else, not done that. If I point the finger, then you go the three pointing back. More important is the investigation of what is going on within me. And as I said, the getting curious about any belief we might have, because we're all going to have some ideas, we might have an opinion about something, we might have a preference, but actually, when we hang on to it, what can happen is you think that's who you are. So you might have a belief about something, whether it's political, whether it's sport, whether it's professional, whatever it might be, whether it's educational, and that's, you know, that's we're humans, we're having an experience of a human journey. So you might have this an idea, but what goes wrong is when you believe you are that idea, you believe you are that opinion, you believe you are that, you know, ideal, I believe. And then, of course, the separation can happen because someone else has a different view, and that's when conflict happens. Now, the conflict's within you, and the conflict's because that isn't who you are. That's an idea. But if you can hold lightly to it and recognise that the connection happens through validating the differences, and then when we validate the difference in another, we recognise the connection and the wholeness and the sameness, and that we are all one. So therefore, yes, of course, we'll have an idea, we have a belief, but every time we recognise we're holding it, that's when we need to go, okay, what's that to do with me? Because then from that comes judgment. And if we're judging another, then of course we're separating. And ultimately, it's really being thorough with whether we're judging. Of course we're going to, again, we're humans, we're going to observe one another, we are on a human journey. We're experiencing ourselves as human, we're experiencing being in a body, we're experiencing having a mind. But of course, ultimately, the truth of who we are, that essence, that centre point, which we were experiencing through the through the breath, that experience of ourselves, then of course, we become the master of our body, we are the master of our mind. It's our temple, the body's the temple of the soul. All of these things are the absolute truth. This body's going to die. This body's going to go, but there's no beginning or end to us. There is no death. It's knowing, it's experiencing ourselves, the faceless, the formless, the face before we were born. What was our face before we were born? What's the face when we're not here? Who are we? And I've had the most amazing privilege to work with some people with dementia. I'm not looking at Jill's not got dementia. We worked with Rob. A few people here, the partners of them, I've worked with them to their death with dementia. And one of the things that was so powerful was to say to them, do you know who you are? And I used to say to him, Rob, and to Sandy, with Jania, we used to say, do you know who you are? And they did. They went they left their bodies, and their mind was going, and they worked with me, we worked together, one of us, all the way through to the death. But they knew who they were, and they had to let go of the knowing, doing what we do with our minds. And it was just such a privilege to write even the day before your mum was gone, to see that, that people did know who they were, the body was going, the mind had gone, and they knew who they were. And I've had the privilege as well, worked with quite a lot of people right to the end of their lives, and I always ask that question. I always would say, your body's going, but do you know who you are? And I think I learned that. I did a lot of that in my 30s. And it was there that I really saw that these people, before they let go, before they left their body, they knew who they were. So it was easy to let go of their body. And I knew that really I needed to experience that myself. And if people wanted to learn from me, then know who I was in this body, in this experience. And therefore it is really important to know that if we're not at the core of our being, if we're not working at that level, if we're not in our centre, if we're not aiming to be present in every single moment, I know it's not easy to do it all the time. I know that we all work together, and I do know the intention's there, and it's not always easy. But if the intention, because if we're not in our centre, we're not at our core, we're not doing the work, and we can't clear the karmic patterns. Because if we're reacting, and we all know about reactivity, because if we're reacting, and when if we're always reacting, then what happens is we're reenacting the past. Because when we react, and reaction doesn't always have to be a great big outburst, reaction can be a withdrawal, reaction can just be a change of energy in the body, reaction can come as a thought, a judgment, a closing of the heart. And really, for us to know who we are, we need to be open all the time. And the way we stay open is not closing. So therefore, if we react, and that is the work, so if we're not committed, because to investigate all of this that I've said, all our paradigm, all our adaptations, all our wounding, all of the things that have happened. Obviously, we've all talked about this. This is why tonight I invited people who've already been working. So that bit about adaptations, you've all had the understanding of that we bury, we get hurt, we internalise we're not okay because our parent was busy when we needed them, or they told us off when they were tired, and we internalise that we're somehow not okay, that we're not lovable, that we're not good enough. All sorts of things can be internalised. So then the investigation of that is so important, and it demonstrates itself in our reactivity. So what happens is something will happen again, the pattern repeats. It repeats in a completely different scenario, different set of people. Not always. It can happen when we go back into the family home, that the people we go into, the whole thing happens again. And we go, oh no, it's all happening again, and they're this and they're that. But then, of course, we recognise that what's happening is if we react, and we either withdraw, or we act out, or we judge, or we just basically close our heart down, what happens is we reenact the scenario, the same thing happens again, we get told we're not okay, we get not get the love we need, and therefore we get more hurt, and we can get more and more wounded. When we start to do this work and start to recognise that below all of this, or below is probably a funny word, but with the truth of who we are, isn't anything to do with any of these. It's nothing to do with our, as I say, our beliefs, our values, our identifications, whether we're good at something, whether we're not good at something. The thing is, there's always going to be people who are better than us at something. There's always going to be people we can do something better than. But when we get caught up in needing to feel okay to be good at something, or feel okay if that person likes us, every time we're looking outside ourselves, every time we're going, I need that job to feel okay, I need that person to fulfill me, I need that person to do that to make me feel all right, we're immediately lost, and we immediately won't know who we are, because we're looking outside for something outside us to fill up something which is actually lost inside ourselves. Whereas when we start to know that the journey's the inner one, and that so within, so without, that we need to go within. So if we feel that person, outside us is going to make us feel better, what is it that we are thinking we need them to do? Because then when we look within, and we start to answer it ourselves, it's the same with whether it's a job, whether it's, succeeding at something. Because ultimately, the truth of who we are is beyond all of that. And then what can happen is we start to recognise that instead of feeling like the world's happening to me, because I think a lot of people feel that the world's happening to them, the life's happening to them, and then of course that's a very, very vulnerable thing, because that person's done that, or that hasn't happened, or the weather's not good, or all of these things. And actually, what then can happen is people get a bit more empowered, and I know there's a lot out in the world now which is empowering people, and I can see that there's a real value at certain stages in people's development to get good at something, to find themselves succeeding at something. There's a different levels. We're just talking about something with a bit more depth. But there is a point where people do need to feel, oh, I feel better because I succeeded at that. But it is a chimera. It is something that's going to go in the end. So ultimately, people can make things happen and they'll feel good, and that's part of sometimes the very journey of life is we need to succeed at something, create something, get something, to find out that that still hasn't led us to who we are. We'll get flashes of it, we'll fall in love and it feels amazing, or we'll get some success and it feels wonderful. And we get those kind of feelings of joy and we want more of it. But of course, actually it's the Buddhist saying, isn't it? There is no path to happiness. Happiness is the path. And I'm looking at Tim only because he picked that card once, didn't you? And so ultimately it is recognising that those give us an idea of, we want to feel good. Everybody wants to feel at ease. Everyone wants to feel in love with themselves. And it's recognising that, letting go of it being out there, but then, as I say, there will be places where we'll go, that's amazing, I succeeded at that. And that's not to be denied. As I say, when I'm working individually with people, there's a different levels of where people are wanting to be in their life. But ultimately, it's still all going to go. So what can happen is we start to recognise that we aren't our successes, we're not our achievements, we're not our failures. we are ourselves. Whether we succeed or whether we fail, we're not a better person or a lesser person. We're just us, and we're learning about ourselves and we're discovering. Then what can happen is things start to come through us. So then our experiences, the things we do are starting to come through us. So instead of us looking outside to try and know who we are and feel good, what starts to happen is the things flow through us. So whether it's being moved to do something like me doing this, it just is something that comes through, it's an offering. And then you aren't looking for things outside you. So you start to feel that it's all right. It doesn't need someone else to tell you you're okay. You don't need someone to love you. You don't need someone to tell you you've done well. Because that's always going to take you away from knowing who you are. When you know who you are, then your things start to come through you. You're not dependent, and of course, on other people's ideas and things. So then what can happen is you start to really have a much, much more experience of life that is joyous, is at ease. Because if we are able to stay in our centre at all times, if we're able to be present at all times, you would never not know who you were. Ever, ever, ever. You would know that if something's going on and there's a wobble on the outer realms and something's happening, and it could be anything from a business going wrong to a person deciding to leave or somebody dying or anything at all, if you're able to stay in your centre, and any emotion that arises, any distress, as a human we're going to have these rising kind of changes of energy. If we're able to experience the energy changing in our body, experience it, whether it's anger or distress or upset or any of the human emotions that are of course going to happen, but we don't get into a narrative with it, we then don't create a psychological drama. And I know I talk about this a lot, but what can happen in just everyday life, that somebody will feel they might either think a thought that is triggered by something that's gone on in their, in a relationship, in work, and then they can get the feeling in their body, or it could be the other way around, the body goes and feels a bit off, and then the narrative can start. And that is something that keeps people so far away from who they are, because we're in a cycle then of what, as I say, I'd call a psychological drama, and we can get locked in that. And then, of course, you don't know who you are, because you start to become the drama, and you start to become the pattern. Now, of course, if we practice every single day, and as I said, if we go from the perspective that the only thing that's important for us to know who we are is to be committed 24/7, every day, am I in my centre? And being in your centre, you come back with a conscious breath. You can take one big, deep breath into your tummy, come back into the body, come back into presence, and then gradually the mind can start to still. Now, I know that this is an ongoing process, because often people are living in their minds and in their stories and in their narratives. So all of this takes lots and lots of practice. You need to be prepared to then not get into a thing of, I'm not good at being present. Because again, it's very tricky. The mind is very tricky. The mind will want to keep us locked in, because the mind doesn't want to die. The mind is going to keep trying to keep us identified, keep us in our dramas, keep us in our kind of loops. And actually, the mind's an amazing tool, but the more we learn to come back to stillness, and that can just be by practicing, watching, witnessing. If our mind's racing about, not, I said to somebody the other day, if a thought's stressful, don't think it. And that's as simple as it is, really and truly. If it's a stressful thought, don't think it. And there we are.
You take a pill.
Or don't believe it. So if you thought it, don't believe it, because ultimately it's not true. The mind has its own, the thing with the mind is its job is to think. In the same way our heart's job is to beat. So we don't want our heart to stop beating. So it beats away, and we don't want our liver to stop doing whatever livers do, and our kidneys to do. So we don't want our mind not to think, but we don't, it's a slightly different kind of organ, because somehow it can take over. Whereas ultimately, a mind is like language. Really, we should just switch it on and switch it off. So when we want to think, it's there. But if it's just doing all these cycles, it's not, you're not going to know who you are, because it's going to having all these stories, all these dramas. So the work is to be aware of what you're thinking, but not believe you are those thoughts. To be able to always press pause, and that's the thing I always would say. If we have a reaction to something, or we can feel ourselves tensing, or we feel ourselves immediately judging, or immediately having an opposite thing to what's been said, come back to the breath. And there's a gap between when something happens, there's a gap before you need to take action. There's a gap, and there's actually all the time in the world, all the space. There's limitless amount of space before you need to do anything. And that's the bit we need to get in touch with, because that's where the essence of us, the silence, the stillness, the part that's always watching. There is the witnesser, that the bit that has never been born, never died, the part of us that's the truth of us, is the witnesser of it all, is watching all our dramas, watching everything. And when we are in touch with that, when we become aware, then we can experience that everything going on that isn't to do with us. Well, it is to do with us, of course, because it can be karmic. So if we've got something going on and there's a pattern, and we see it again, and we've gone, well, they've gone around this before, we mustn't get stuff on stuff, as I call it, because if we start to go, oh, I thought I'd got rid of this, then immediately we're in our ego again, because we are identified with being somebody who's meant to be not doing that. Whereas ultimately, if we get into the presence and we are witnessing a pattern, then what we know is that we've still got work to do, and there's an investigation. And these patterns can be so deeply karmic. They can be lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes. And there's no rush, there's nowhere to get to, but there is the process of experiencing ourselves. And really, all we need is one another. We only need the mirror, because in every single person in the world, everything we're experiencing is a mirror of us. And it's therefore we need nothing else but to be here, to be a human. If we're calling it a spiritual journey, it's a very ordinary journey, the spiritual journey, in that the more we shed who we have believed ourselves to be, whether that's, as I say, a good person, a bad person, a successful person, an unsuccessful person, a happy person, an unhappy person, a joyous person, a depressed person, whatever we might believe ourselves to be, the more we shed it and we get to the essence of who we are, what happens is it's very ordinary, because we are human and we just carry on. But of course it's a much more fun experience, because there isn't the conflict. The conflict in life is an aberration. And as I say, it's within us. So all we need is all the people in front of us to be our mirror. And if there's something going on within us, or something going on that we don't like, or something we do like, all we need to do is look within and know that it's an opportunity for our growth, and that if we think that person out there is doing something, isn't doing something, what we do is we miss the opportunity to be able to get free, clear, abundant, have fun, and experience life as I think it's meant to be experienced. Obviously, the closer the relationship, intimacy is the magnifying glass, and that isn't necessarily just lovers and partners. Obviously, friendships and work colleagues and all of the people we're closer to can be the magnifying glass to us. So therefore, if we go from the perspective that all we need to do, and it's very simple, as I was saying actually to somebody yesterday who I was working with, I said, actually there's nothing really to say, except me, how long have I spoken for? There's actually nothing really to say, because ultimately the truth of who we are, as I say, is an experiential thing. No one else can tell you who you are. It's an ongoing experience. So therefore we might believe we want to do something, and we need to follow that. So we have to follow. We can't go, oh, I don't know if it's who I am. Because if we follow something, we get moved to do a project, we move to go into a relationship, we move to do a challenge, move to set up a business. If we're on a path of consciousness, path of journeying to who we are, in that we will discover ourselves, because inevitably what's going to happen is anything that needs clearing away will come up. It can't not. So if we go into a new relationship, then we will see ourselves mirrored. If we go into a new job, and if we don't think, oh God, I've got to be who I truly am, we won't know who we truly am until we just keep. There's the saying, that is keep wiping the dust from the mirror. So wiping the dust from the mirror is wiping away all of the illusion that comes up, so all of the reactivity, all of the beliefs, all of the judgments, all of the upset, all of the drama. Keep wiping the mirror, keep wiping the mirror, and all the time you keep wiping the mirror, eventually you find there is no mirror, which is, as I was saying, we go from being a bit of a victim to life's happening to me, to going to, well, I'm going to make life happen. Life starts to happen through us. Then the more we keep wiping the dust from the mirror to find there's no mirror, we find we are life, we find we are all that is. We know we experience ourselves. Then what happens? We carry on a human journey. There's nothing else to do. We don't then stop. We're here in a body all the time. We're here. We just keep going, and we just now experience. I know what I was going to say back there. That I said the little things. So really, as I say, we keep going. We keep coming back to our centre. We keep coming back to presence. If we're back in the present moment, there's nothing else. There is no past. There is no future. All is here. That's all there is now. But we experience it. And then as we experience it and experience presence and experience the ease and joy of that, then, as I said, we practice. Because, of course, we're on a human journey. We're going to come up against conflict and difficulty and all the things that the human journey presents. But if we practice with the tiny things, so if we practice feeling because we're cross because somebody's, cut us up in the car, or we're cross because of whatever might have happened, that it's a small thing really, but people can get very upset by small things. If we work with knowing that everything is to be looked at, everything, because sometimes people will think, well, I just need to work on the fact that, I'm fed up with my work colleague or my partner or whatever. But it isn't, it's everywhere, because we are everywhere, we're in everything. If it's in something big, it's obviously everywhere. So we work with the little things, but then what can happen is if bigger things do arise in our life, and there are bigger, events that might be challenging to us, or bigger events that are amazing, but the bigger things we can still, because unfortunately, people often get stressed and upset and find things difficult when it's a wonderful thing, like a wonderful celebration. And of course, that's mad, because really and truly, we're here to experience. And I think that's all life is for, is we're here to experience in every single moment. Actually, I wrote this in my blog, that people want things to be different to make their life experience good. Whereas if actually we're here with this experience now, we're fully here, we're fully present, there isn't anything else. We do start to really know, we know who we are. And then it means that even if there's a big thing happens, that of course, the loss, the biggest thing for us all is losing one another to the form going, the body going. And then we have not the experience of the joyous thing of being human and being able to connect and to meet together like this and have this experience of love and connection. So obviously if somebody goes and dies, that's going to bring up sadness for us because we're on a human journey. But if we know there is no death, if we know that it's just part of this whole process, this whole scheme, then we can experience the grief without getting into the identification with it, as I say, or it becoming a drama. But it means we can be very clear and pure and in experiencing the life changes that can happen to us all, of course. So I'm not saying that we wouldn't be human in our, things can be disappointing, things can be, lots of things can happen. And as I say, although I like to teach at this level, obviously, as you know, I like working one-on-one, and therefore I know that people have to, work at the process they're working on, and it isn't necessarily easy. So even though I'm saying this as the absolute essence of what is true for us all, and if we can remember this, even when we're, in the midst of something difficult, or we're upset with somebody, or they're upset with us, but we know that that within us there is that stillness, there is that clarity, that is that essence, there is who we truly are. And then we don't need anything from outside, and we become, it isn't even about, I know there's a lot said about loving ourselves, but I don't think people know what that means, because I think it means that the more you clear away the bits that, if you react, if any time we react, we are closed off love to the person in front of us, obviously, but ultimately we've closed off love to ourselves because we wouldn't react if we hadn't felt that somehow we had, they didn't like us, we'd done something wrong. So ultimately, if any time that happens, we keep our heart open, we don't close it. We recognise that we need to breathe and affect love into us. We need to go deep into the centre of our being and clear the energy that is, at odds, that isn't feeling good. What happens is we get deeper and deeper into the centre of our being. We know who we are. We become who we truly are because we never aren't it. We become consciousness, love, freedom, joy. We experience it. And as I say, and then what happens is we carry on. And we carry on being Julia and Bernardi and Tracy and Leslie, and we carry on. But there's a difference because the conflict is gone, and therefore the life changes, and everything starts to expand in a different way. And you know who you truly are. So, I don't know how long I've spoken for, but that's
just over 45 minutes.
Yeah, that's probably enough, isn't it? You're probably hungry. But what we're going to do, as I say, with this, essentially, as I said to the person last night, on some levels there's nothing to say, because, as I said, really and truly, we know who we are, but it's the guidance for you to come back to your centre. It's the guidance to know that, ultimately, that takes discipline, it takes commitment, and it takes it daily, 24/7, and what can be helpful, of course, is breath work, is chanting. All of these things can be helpful to get the feeling of, here I am. And therefore, people can get very distracted, because what can happen is we go, oh yeah, I'm committed, I'm going to do this every day. But then people get distracted by, oh no, this is really important though, because I've got really important this, or I've got important that. Oh, I'm going to do, no, I can't do that now. Whereas actually the only thing that's important is what I would call this work. Work's a funny word. But I think the only thing that's important is that we come back to our centre point and we work towards the place of presence. That means everything can come through us. Now that doesn't mean, as I've said many times, it doesn't mean we won't do things, because, action comes through that. But it doesn't mean we would do anything. But it also doesn't mean that, we're not necessarily going to have some challenges, but it does mean that there's a completely different quality to how we are living, and that we know that, who we truly are. So what we're going to do is have food, which is very exciting. Thank you, and Andy and Michelle and Kay. And then what we're going to do is chat amongst ourselves. And then what we're going to do is, if people have any questions or anything they want to chat about, then we'll do some more. But that's dependent on whether you want to do that or whether we'll just go with the flow. But thank you for listening to me, and thank you.